Okay, so for this section of the course, we will be discussing Excel database functions. And what database functions do is perform calculations on a range of cells, but we can provide conditions or criteria to tell Excel to only calculate the cells that meet our criteria. And for the next few videos, I want to point out that we will be working inside the D Functions Sheet tab. So make sure you have this tab selected. So before we actually get into the database functions, I want to introduce to you the SUMIF function. Because the SUMIF function and the DSUM function basically do the same thing, but depending on different scenarios, one function may be more useful than the other. That's why I want to show you both, so you can get a better understanding how both these functions work and know when it's the right time to use these functions. So what is the SUMIF function? The SUMIF function can sum the values in a range of cells that meet criteria that we specify. For example, let's say that we wanted to sum all the cells for a specific region. Well, based on a lecture earlier in the course, we can apply a sort to the region column to get all the regions grouped together and then add a subtotal. But if you don't need to do that, we could use the SUMIF function. So to start off, we need to enter our function in our spreadsheet. I'm going to click inside cell H3 because this is where we want our result to be. And then we should know by now that all functions and formulas start with the equal sign. And then I'm going to start typing SUMIF. I'm going to give this function a double click, and our little help bar shows us which arguments are needed for this function. But if you're not used to certain functions, sometimes you don't really know what these arguments actually mean. So to get a better understanding how this function works, I'm going to click this FX button up here near our formula bar. And we have seen this function arguments window before, and it tells us that the SUMIF function adds the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. So the first argument is the range, which is the range of cells that you want evaluated. So if we wanted to sum the total cells of a specific region, the range that we want evaluated would be the region. So I'm going to select the whole region column. And our second argument is our criteria. And it tells us that the criteria is the condition or criteria in the form of a number, expression, or text that defines which cells will be added. So basically, we are specifying which region that we want to add the cells for. So for example, if we wanted to add the total cells for the South region, I can manually type in South, or we can provide a cell reference. So instead of hard coding South into this formula, we can select cell G3. And whenever a user types in which region here, it will add the cells for that region. And then the last argument is the sum range, which are the actual cells to sum. So for this argument, we want to select the cells column because these are the cells that we want to sum. And if we click OK, right now our answer is 0 because in our formula, we are referencing cell G3 for the region and we haven't specified the region yet. So if we want to sum all the cells for the North region, we can type in North and it will calculate the total cells for the North region. And if we want to change the region, all we have to do is click inside this cell and we can type in a different region. And then it will give us the total of cells for that region. So that's the SUMIF function, only using one criteria. But what if you wanted to apply multiple criteria? For example, let's say you wanted to add the total cells for the South region, but only for the month of April. Well, instead of using the SUMIF function, we can use the SUMIFs with an S function. So we can state multiple criteria. So I'm going to select the cell where we have our function in, and then I'm going to search for the SUMIFs function. I'm going to delete this out of our formula and then double click the SUMIF function. I'm going to open up the function's argument window to get a better understanding of how this function works. Now it tells us that the SUMIF function adds the cell specified by a given set of conditions or criteria. So it sounds kind of the same of the SUMIF function, but here we can add multiple criteria. So the first argument for this function is the sum range, which are the actual cells that we want to sum. So I'm going to select the cells column because those are the values that we want to sum. And our second argument is criteria range 1, which is the range of cells you want evaluated for this particular condition. Well, our goal is to sum the total cells for a region, but within a specific month. It doesn't matter which order you put your criteria in. You can do the region first or the month first. I'm just going to do the region first, so I'm going to select the region column. In our third argument, criteria 1, we are stating the criteria for our first criteria range. So our first criteria range was the region column, and for our criteria, I'm going to select our region cell reference, G3. And currently this criteria shows that it equals south because we have south written in this cell. And for our criteria range 2, the cells that we want to evaluate is the month column. And the criteria for that range, I'm going to use the cell reference F3 for month. And right now this criteria shows that it equals 0 because we have nothing written in this cell yet. So if I click OK, right now the total cell shows 0 because our month is blank. But if we type in April for the month, we should get the total cells for the South region only for the month of April. And the total comes out to $6,577. Now to double check, just to make sure if our function is calculating correctly, I'm going to come over here to our data, select the drop down for region, and only show South. And then I'm going to select the drop down for month and apply a filter to only show April. And if we select these cells, come down to our status bar, our sum shows $6,577, which is the exact same value that our function calculated. Now I'm going to clear these filters, come up to the Data tab, and click the Clear command. So the reason why I wanted to show you the SUMIF and the SUMIFs function is to build a basic understanding how we can perform calculations based on certain conditions that we specify. So this was kind of like a preview to the database functions that we will be discussing in the next few videos, and then you'll be able to see the advantages and disadvantages between the two. But I believe knowing how to use the SUMIF and the SUMIFs function is a very important tool to know how to use in Excel, and it can be very useful to your spreadsheets.